Stories of an Aircraft Builder. You have already heard some of the articles that were published in the magazine FLUGZEUG by FLUGZEUG Publikations GmbH at the time. This publishing house under Manfred Franzke not only published this magazine but also a series under the title FLUGZEUG Profile, Aircraft Profiles. I got to know Manfred Franzke during the construction of my first triplane, and we often talked about historic airplanes. He was also involved in founding the German Society for the Preservation of Historic Aircraft in 1996 and asked me to become a member, which I didn't. We didn't get very close personally, especially as I knew that he was politically active, and people who are politically active have always been somewhat suspicious to me. Because of the articles he published about my work and because he knew that I could formulate reasonably sensible sentences, he asked me if I would be prepared to put together something about the triplane for his magazine series FLUGZEUG Profile. Naturally, I was thrilled and sat down to start writing. The magazine turned out quite nicely and appeared as number 19 in his series. Unfortunately, the quality of the photos wasn't as high as the prints I submitted, but that was not too bad. That also must have been around 1996 or 1997, and my friend Wolfgang also helped with the compilation and selection of what we wanted to write. Wolfgang was also present in one or two conversations with Manfred Franzke. At the time we wanted to do the whole thing in such a way that Wolfgang was mentioned as an author too. That was fine with me because the Fokker team was just starting up and I was happy to have him on board. Later, he didn't like it anymore for personal reasons, but it was already too late and both our names were on the title as authors. In itself, the booklet was a nice project, and I am still often asked about it today. However, it has shown me how easy it is to fall into traps in several respects. Firstly, of course, in terms of content. Everyone who writes something suddenly turns from a pure consumer to a teacher of sorts, because others read what you have written and take it as face value. And so today, I also have to fight against myself when I have been desperately trying to keep the name Reinhold Platz out of the design of aircraft by Fokker. And I do this for decades now. Reinhold Platz had a significant influence on the construction of the aircraft, no doubt about it, but he was not a designer. But I don't want to make an issue of that here. I just want to say that I didn't know any better at the time and wrote it that way, because it had always been written that way. In later publications, I always try to set the record straight by publishing my new findings, and it was naturally and justifiably reproached by others for having written it that way myself. That's one side of the coin, that you can quickly fall flat on your face with something like this. The other side is the business side. There was of course an author's contract between me and Manfred Franzke and FLUGZEUG Publikations GmbH. It also stipulated what the royalties for the magazine should be. Of course, I still have my contracts somewhere tucked away, but I'm not going to dig them out now. As far as I remember, we agreed on a 7% royalty at the time. I never received any of that. Even my inquiries to Manfred Franzke were always quickly dismissed with, "The payments will come." I am basically interested in the cause and not the money, and the amounts involved were not huge. That's why I never made a fuss of it. I was concerned with the principle of the matter and the way I was treated at the time. Therefore I withdrew from FLUGZEUG Publikations GmbH. After my experiences with other publishing houses, I knew how it all worked anyway. That was one of the reasons why I founded my own publishing house with my father to publish our books. Nevertheless, the whole thing caused me a little personal damage. I didn't know about it at the time, but FLUGZEUG Publikations GmbH passed on the text of my FLUGZEUG Profile number 19 to an American publisher called Schiffer Military History. who published it in translated form in English. The booklet seems to be very popular with modelers worldwide still today. The translation is actually identical to the content of the Flugzeug Profile. The funny thing is how I found out about it and how it discredited me personally. I'm getting ahead of myself now and will mention it later again. Schiffer used a print of James Dietz's painting, The Last Word, as the cover. A wonderful painting which I admire a lot, as all the other drawings done by James Dietz. Obviously they did it without the knowledge of James Dietz himself. I knew nothing about this book that was published in 1998. Only when I was invited to New Zealand almost 10 years later to build airplanes for Peter Jackson and his company, the Vintage Aviator Limited, did I get to know James Dietz personally. We were both guests of Peter Jackson and of course sat together in the evening in the lobby of the old St. Mary's Convent. We weren't formally introduced yet, but we got talking because I noticed that he was eyeing me suspiciously from the side. I introduced myself and we chatted for a while until, after a while, he asked how I came to use his painting as a cover for a book of mine. I didn't know what to do at first, as I had never heard of the book and didn't know that it was the translation of number 19 of Manfred Franzke's series, nor did I know that they used his painting as a cover. Naturally, he found me stammering and in need of an explanation. I told him I didn't know anything, which he obviously didn't buy. I could only apologize, nothing more. The slightly suspicious looks remained. We know each other now, and I really appreciate his work, as he is a truly exceptional artist, but I think he thinks I'm a bit of a rascal. And I can't blame him for that. If the circumstances had been different, I would have been very honored to have his painting as my book cover. As it is, I'm just embarrassed about it all. The only thing I could do to make amends was to officially buy one of the art prints of his painting. It now hangs in my Richthofen memorabilia corner in my museum. James, I'm really sorry. I know that he and Peter Jackson get on well, and I'm pretty sure they might have had a conversation about it, and I can well imagine that this also led to the turmoil that I went into and which I will talk about in detail later. That was the last little slap on the back of my head I received from Manfred Franzke and Flugzeug Publikations GmbH. But as the saying goes, small blows to the back of the head are known to increase the ability to think.